Laura, what I find really fascinating chatting to you is that your mindset is so strong and so powerful and so sure. I can't understand how somebody with that mindset has struggled with some of the issues that you've spoken about before, because a lot of that will be mental health battles or pertaining to an eating disorder or whatever that you've sort of spoken about quite openly before. How have you sort of overcome all of that? Because it feels like you have a really strong mind, which feels at odds with the things that you've had to cope with.
Thanks. That means a lot, honestly. Thank you. But no, I'm like everyone. I cried to my parents yesterday about having to do my tax return because it was just all too stressful for me. I am a strong person, definitely, but I am not anything different to anybody else when it comes to your everyday stresses. I get triggered by many things like everybody does, but I do believe that all the things that I've been through and the things that I've made it through, whether it was being a young athlete and very overexposed at a young age, or it was an eating disorder, or it was sepsis, whatever it was that kind of I came up head to head with, I'd always seen as just part of my kind of calling to whatever is going to lead me into next. And never for a million years, if you had told me 4 years ago even that I was going to be kind of going for breaking records and trying to surf the biggest waves in the world, I think I probably would have laughed at you. So it's definitely just the journey. And I think you never know kind of what's coming next, but it's just about getting up each day and fighting and seeing, yeah, like what you can achieve when you don't have these mental health ties or, yeah, just kind of making them your own, I think. And yes, bulimia was honestly one of the most horrible and terrible things that I wouldn't want my worst enemy to have to deal with, any eating disorder. But I do believe that it's made me this strong woman that I am today, and has given me more than anything just this drive to inspire other young women that you're more than just what you look like. And just, yeah, if you've got a dream, go for it, and don't let society or social medias or your peers ever tell you that you can't do something that you feel is destined for you.
See, this sort of image you have of this sort of young girl surfing, superstar at a really early age, beautiful, got everything at your feet. And then you're battling with this whole other piece behind the scenes. I mean, how that, of course, is a juxtaposition in itself. How unlike yourself did you feel in those years? How out of yourself did you feel during that time when you were sort of, being a poster girl for surfing effectively, when actually behind the scenes you were dealing with all of this anguish? I mean, what did that feel like during those years?
It's really tough because I was 12 years old. I got sponsored by Billabong, which for me was literally my lifelong dream. So to get that, I think at such a young age, felt like, well, I've got everything now. I just have to do what I have to do to keep it. And I think being so young, you are willing to just say yes. And I do think that the brands knew that at that time. And, I'd grown up as a tomboy. I was not somebody who was into necessarily wearing cutesy bikinis and doing all the girly stuff. But it was definitely apparent that that was where my value lied for these brands. And all of us girls, sadly, that were trying to pursue professional, careers in surfing back then, if we looked good in a bikini, that was your value. And as sad as that is, again, it's made me who I am today and given me this kind of power to want to inspire younger women to be more than just that. And yeah, I think there's always a side of me that wishes that I could have seen that for what it was in that time. But I also know that there wasn't a space for us to have a voice then. And it has taken time, and it has taken us all to grow up and to realize that certain things weren't right. And to finally feel like I'm getting the respect in the sport that I was meant to so many years ago is an incredible personal achievement for me as just a girl from Devon. Is really nice to kind of, yeah, have people just kind of come up to me and say that what I'm doing is inspiring them to go out and do something that they thought maybe they couldn't do is way more way more of an achievement for me than any poster I've been in, that's for bloody sure.
And it feels like you kind of found yourself again. I mean, is that right? Because it feels like you retired from the sport and did this whole Love Island thing and whatever came off the back of that. And then it feels like your pull to the ocean was always there, and it's where you went back to. And do you feel happy? Do you finally feel like you've got yourself back on track and you are where you want to be?
100%, definitely. I feel for the first time ever, I'm the Laura I was always meant to be, and the one that I always wanted to be when I was a young girl, when I just surfing and enjoying the sport for what it was. And that is a beautiful thing, because surfing has always been the thing that has kept me grounded and been there for me when I've been struggling with my mental health or literally struggling with anything. It was always my safe space. So that was definitely not a nice thing to feel like I had lost. But, I went into Love Island trying to be, I think, the woman that I am now. I was only 22. So, there's an element of that you've got these big dreams of inspiring women to be sporty and a bit more athletic. And, I wanted to go into that show to really be who 15-year-old Laura needed to see in that show. And it was, maybe a bit more of a masculine build. It was not so glammed up. Mate, I used to sit in that room for like 2 hours while they used to get changed and be like, I don't even know what you guys are doing. I'm here. And I think they were all just moments of me really choosing myself and being like, okay, that's what the world, want to see from this show, but I'm going to stay true to me. And I think through that whole experience, I did myself proud because I did stay true to who I was and I didn't conform. And that's something that I can always hold my head high with, I guess, and know that this journey started there, and it was very, very apparent to me really quickly on that was not an industry I felt comfortable or happy in. And I started doing some influencer stuff that also felt just very unfulfilling for me. And I was grateful for the journey. I was grateful for everybody that I'd met, but the ocean is definitely my home.
And was it like a triggering experience? Because that whole premise of that show is based on the way you look, and beautiful bodies and that whole jazz. And that's fine for some people, right? But clearly that's a world that you'd already been exposed to that you weren't comfortable with. Was it sort of a triggering experience that, on the other side of it, you needed to just, get yourself back to the ocean waves and back to some sort of form of your own version of sanity?
Yeah, I was living in Portugal at the time when I actually went to the show, so I don't think I actually knew. Yeah, I don't think I really knew the magnitude that show was, honestly. And it wasn't until we left the show, and bearing in mind I ended up being like one of the last 5 couples. It was wild, just absolutely wild. I was slingshotted into this world that was so far away from how I had kind of grown up. And I had more followers, I think, going in there than most of the people, because I'd been on Instagram since I was like 15 years old. We had like 10,000 followers overnight when it first kind of downloaded. So I think I'd always had people have their opinions on what I was doing or have their opinions on how I was looking since I was really young. So that side of it for me actually didn't really bother me. I came out and there was lots of Daily Mail articles saying that I didn't have my nails done and that I wasn't glam enough and that I had my build was very masculine and my shoulders were big, which had been huge hang-ups for me anyway. And they were real insecurities for me, that I wasn't particularly feminine and all of these things that I was like proud to be when I went in there. I definitely, when I came out, was like, oh wow, like they just pinpointed all the things that I was insecure about. Even though they were the things that I was trying to really show off and be like proud of. It's just not something that show really wanted to perceive in a positive frame, I suppose. But again, I just don't think I was in the right space in time to be able to relay the message. So yeah, I just had to go surf Nazaré and surf a couple of 60 footers and get my voice heard like that. So could have done that the whole time, but there you go.
And what's next? Because I don't know how you beat that. I mean, are you sort of set on permanently terrifying yourself with the next big challenge? I mean, where do you go from here?
Yeah, I mean, this first season has been insane. If I was literally having this conversation with my parents last night, I was like, not even a year ago, I didn't even know anything about toe surfing, like not one thing. And now all of a sudden, I'm kind of looking at doing a whole winter of competing on the world tour, and just, yeah, I'm, one of the top 5 female big wave surfers already. So for me, like, this was what I was meant to do. I've tried so many things in my life, and I've given it, kind of a bit of a half heart for many of them, but this one is definitely what I was put on this planet to do.
This is a really dark question, but I want to ask it. When you're in that moment where you are looking up at that 60-foot wave and it's enormous and you probably feel tiny, as you've spoken about before, do you ever feel, what if I don't come out of this on the other side okay? Does that ever cross your mind?
Yes, that does come into your head. But it's a really weird one. I think the thing that you're battling the whole time is whether it's your gut telling you that this isn't the wave to go on, that something's not right, maybe that there's a big lump through the middle of it and it's going to end up being like a kind of shelf that just drops away, or is it just fear? And it's just your, mind telling you, God, this is really, really scary and I'm scared, rather than that something really bad is going to happen. I think it's definitely a balance between your gut and fear, and knowing the difference between those two is obviously really, really important in what we do, because there is times where you do have to say, no, this isn't the wave. And there's times where you probably should have said, no, this isn't the wave, and you still go anyway. And you have to be ready to deal with what's coming next. I think anybody that enters the water in Nazaré that isn't kind of somewhat, come to terms with the fact that you might not come out of there, then, you shouldn't really be out there at all, I think, because there is a lot of risk. And I think if you're kind of just ignoring the amount of risk that there is, that's when really bad things can happen. And you've got to be really on the ball. Like, it is no joke. You've got one shot to get on the back of that jet ski at the end of the wave. And yeah, if you kind of mess it up, then that's the difference between you leaving the water and not leaving the water, I suppose. So it's an element of knowing how dangerous the situations that you are in, and thinking in the moment logically, and being very present and not stressing about the things that could happen. But knowing that there is consequences is really important.
See, for most people who are tackling that gut versus fear debate, which is raging in a lot of people's heads a lot of the time, they're not probably contemplating what could be a very dangerous wave hitting them on the head, and then whatever happens, happens. But for most people, that is a constant daily debate, isn't it? This sort of gut versus fear piece. How do you learn to sort of know the difference? How do you train yourself to know the difference?
That's a good question. A lot of meditation, honestly. I think I've learned so much through going inside my brain and learning it and finding out what triggers it, and the moments where I doubt myself more than others, and knowing what those triggers are, and knowing what those kind of crevices that all those fears kind of hide in are the things that kind of make you be able to pull it out of the bag when it really matters. And yeah, just the more you know yourself, the more you know your gut feelings, the more you'll know your irrational and irrational fears. And I think if you can kind of feel safe in those moments of fear, that's a kind of a real good little superpower to have, and to be able to channel your fear into power is an amazing thing. And I think it's where people do incredible things when they're scared. And yeah, I mean, there is always an element of fear, and I think it's kind of a exciting, beautiful, ugly, everything emotion, fear, but one that I think if you can make it your friend, then fear is a pretty good guy.
That's an interesting concept, making fear your friend. We might come back to that a little bit later. But in terms of what you see out there on the ocean waves, because obviously you're super close to it, it's that your field of play, it's where you live and breathe and work. What are your feelings around ocean conservation and ocean health and the way in which the direction of travel for that? Because many people who sort of live and breathe and spend their time on the ocean waves are really worried about what's happening there. What's your sort of take on what's going on out there?
Yeah, it's petrifying. I mean, as you said, we live on the water. Since the age of 8 years old, I've literally spent more hours probably in the water than out of it. And there is massive changes happening that we obviously, as surfers, we're seeing in front of us day in, day out. Water levels are rising. The plastic pollution is devastating. The coral reefs, there's just so many things that we visually see among all the things that we also don't see. In the UK, we've got a real issue with raw sewage we let into our waters. So for me, the fear that someday maybe I can't enter the water, or maybe my kids can't enter the water just to enjoy it, is really scary. It's a place that's helped me through so many mental health struggles, and it's a place that I go and spend with my family and my friends. And the thought that maybe one day we won't have an ocean to enjoy, let alone an ocean to kind of keep our planet afloat, and it creates 50% of our oxygen, and I think everybody needs to care about the ocean, whether you've grown up on the beach or you grow up in a city or a desert or wherever it is. It does have an impact on us all. So yes, we are very passionate about it as surfers, because we're the ones that are seeing it kind of day in, day out. And don't get me wrong, there's also lots of things that us as surfers can still be doing to lessen our impact, and the materials that we use, from wetsuits and surfboards and all the technologies that we're kind of trying to pioneer for hopefully other products to take on. And it does lie with us. We're responsible for kind of protecting the ocean. It's what brings us so much joy. So as a surfer, it's something that we are all very passionate about, and especially in the town where I grew up, we do massive activations in trying to inspire the younger generation to care more for their environment. And I think knowledge is so much power. It is really, really easy to just kind of hide from it and not want to know the situation we're in. But actually, the more you learn about it and the more you learn about what you can do to help it, kind of, it's fulfilling, I think, to give something back to the environment, for sure.
And also, talking about the subject of surfing moving forward, it's now part of the Olympic Games cycle. So Paris 2024 beckons, and surfing part of the mix there. I mean, how exciting is it for you to sort of see that come to fruition? And would you ever go back? Could you ever go back and consider yourself an Olympic contender?
Honestly, amazing that surfing's makes the Olympics. I think, for us as athletes, it's an amazing thing to feel like our sport has finally got the recognition to be a sport and not just a bunch of beach bums enjoying the waves. So that's been, huge for us, and a real kind of big step forward, I think, in us being able to get proper sponsorships and like the support that just wasn't in our sport even 5 years ago. It's amazing, and it just means that the likes of me that want to go and push the boundaries in other sides of surfing, there's also a lot more support for that as well. Would I go back to competitive surfing in that kind of space? I think I've done my time there. There's definitely moments where I miss the competitive side of it, which is why I'm really excited to push the competitive big wave stuff. But I think for me, the adrenaline of big wave surfing is pretty hard to beat.
That sounds about right, and a good place to leave it. Laura, thanks so much for chatting to me today. I massively appreciate it. And I'm still in complete awe of how you can take on a 60-foot wave, but crack on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.